because we took a look at Jack Hughes earlier on in the week, and we talked about how his first overall season was actually not one of, it was the worst first overall rookie season in the past 20 years in terms of points per 60, and points per game. I decided to take a look at the other two top picks who ended up making their NHL clubs right off the bat, and what I found was really interesting. We're talking here about Jack Hughes, Kaapo Kakko, and Kirby Dach, the 1, 2, and 3 selections in the 2019 NHL entry draft, and how their seasons were really similar statistically speaking. It's actually quite uncanny to see the top two guys not live up to the expectations that people thought they could achieve, and the third overall guy just making the team out of nowhere and having a very similar season to the top two guys. Now, if you need a refresher, the Chicago Blackhawks are the third overall team. They selected Kirby Dach. New York is the second overall team. They selected Kaapo Kakko. And of course, Jack Hughes went first overall to the New Jersey Devils. What we have here is a chart that takes a look at different advanced analytics and basic analytics, as well as their line mates, because I really want to paint a picture as to how similar these guys' years were, despite the very big difference in circumstance. So, if we kick things off here with the points per game, the points per 60, and the time on ice, and the plus-minus, Jack Hughes, Kaapo Kakko, and Kirby Dach are all at really similar numbers. Take a look at this. Jack Hughes had 7 goals and 14 assists for 21 points in 61 games. Kakko had 10 goals and 23 points in 66 games. Kirby Dach had 64 games played, 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points. The points were really closely shared between all three of these guys, as Kakko and Dach each had 23, Hughes had 21. The points per game averages out to roughly a very similar number, 0.3. Hughes was a 0.34, Kakko a 3.5, and Dach a 3.6. Now, the ice time is kind of where things change up a little bit, because Jack Hughes was indeed played a little bit more each game than Kaapo Kakko and Kirby Dach. It's actually kind of funny how Dach is the guy with the least amount of ice time here, even though he is a center. Because of this, points per 60 goes Dach, Kakko, Hughes in that order. Dach just gets a little bit more points out there considering the ice time. So, just taking a look at these numbers without looking at the plus-minus, because we'll get a look at the plus-minus, this is really similar. And each of these three guys were putting up very close numbers. The plus-minus is where things kind of go down, because Kirby Dach was a -1, Kakko a -23, and Jack Hughes a -26. But that does have to do a lot with the team that they play on, and of course plus-minus isn't the best gauge of talent. Despite this, though, the similarities don't stop there, as each of the team's involvement rates are actually really similar too, and in fact, Jack Hughes has the highest involvement rate. Involvement means how often a player is involved in scoring. So what you do to get involvement is you take that player's total amount of points and you divide that by the total number of goals the team that he plays on has scored. The New Jersey Devils scored 189 goals this season, and Jack Hughes had 21 points. 21 divided by 189 is 11.1%. That is the involvement. Jack Hughes was involved in 11% of New Jersey goals. It's funny because Kaapo Kakko's involvement is the lowest here, and that is very easy to see why, because the Rangers, out of the Blackhawks, the Devils, and the Rangers, had the most goals. As a result, Kirby Dach's 23 points out of 212 Chicago Blackhawks goals is enough for a 10.8 involvement, just a little bit behind Jack Hughes, but still really close nonetheless. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit different, and it all has to do with the teams that they play on. Let's take a look at expected goals for per 60. That means every time the player is on the ice for 60 minutes, you could expect the team to have scored this amount of goals. Jack Hughes' goals for per 60 is 1.4, Kakko's is 1.27, and Kirby Dach's is 2.52. That means for every 60 minutes Jack Hughes is on the ice, the Devils will score 1.4 goals. As a result, it's easy to see that Dach definitely does have the highest amount of team expected goals for per 60 minutes, and the same thing can be carried over onto the goals against. Jack Hughes, when he plays on the ice for 60 minutes, the expected numbers lay out that the Devils give up 2.77 goals. Kaapo Kakko gives up 3.14 goals for the Rangers, and Kirby Dach equates to the Blackhawks giving up 2.23 goals. What this means is that Kaapo Kakko, out of these three guys, is the one who makes his team worse when he is on the ice. That's not to say he makes them worse overall, but just compared to Hughes and Dach, the team scores less and they give up more goals when Kaapo Kakko is on the ice relative to when Hughes and Dach are on the ice. This can kind of translate into relative team goals plus minus per 60. What this means is relative to your other teammates, how good is your goals for and goals against ratio? What this stat does is it takes the goals for per 60 and the goals against per 60 of every player on the team, and it compares each player to each other player. What you want is a positive number. That means that your team has a more positive goals plus minus compared to the team when your other teammates are playing. Pretty much, it sets things up against your teammates, so if you have a bad team, it's easier to get a higher relative team goals plus minus per 60 percentage. Jack Hughes is at a negative 0.71. Kakko is at a negative 1.86, and Dach is at a 0.29. Same thing can be said with the shot differentials. What this means is Jack Hughes and Kaapo Kakko, compared to the rest of their teammates, legitimately kind of make the team suffer a little bit more. There are less goals scored and more goals scored for the opposition, and less shots taken and more shots for the opposition when they're on the ice versus when their other teammates are on the ice. Kirby Dach is the only one who is positive in this category. Now, the last one we're taking a look at here is Corsi, because Corsi is important because it kind of tells the story individually, and not necessarily tells the tale of how the team does when you are on the ice compared to how the team does when every other player is on the ice, but it takes a look at the scoring ability of the team as a whole. And also, Corsi recognizes shot attempts, shot blocks, off the post, everything, not just complete shots and goals. All these players have a negative Corsi. They're below 50%, which is not good. Jack Hughes is at 45.7, Kakko 43.5, and Kirby Dach at 48.4. Now, Kirby Dach does have the highest Corsi amongst all of these players, but the relative Corsi, which is the Corsi of this player stacked up against the Corsi of his teammates, Jack Hughes actually has the highest one here. He has a 0.9 relative Corsi for, which means that among his teammates, there are more shot attempts, more shot misses, more shots wide for Jack Hughes than the opposition than when Kaapo Kakko or Kirby Dach are on the ice. What these numbers say to me is that Jack Hughes has been extraordinarily unlucky. That when he plays, which is indeed on a pretty bad team, they don't really have a good system in place when it comes to getting goals out and putting pucks in deep. Hughes can try, but overall it doesn't really work all too well. And that to me is a sign of the physical and mental pushback that Jack Hughes hasn't really gotten over yet to become a true NHL star. Now, because we're on the topic of teams and teammates and overall play on the ice, I commented on the most common line mates too. If you take a look at it, Jack Hughes played the majority of his ice time with Kyle Palmieri, who did indeed lead the Devils in scoring. He played 40% of his ice time at even strength with Palmieri, 40% with Wayne Simmonds, and 24% with Taylor Hall. Now, Wayne Simmonds is an offensive black hole this year, and Taylor Hall got traded. What this says to me, the fact that Taylor Hall is over here with 24% as his third most common line mate, is that Hughes got shuffled around a lot, and he didn't have actual time to develop any chemistry with any of these other players. The fact is, his number one guy was at 40%, whereas the number one guy for Kaapo Kakko and Dach were at 46%. Kaapo Kakko played with Howden, Cheadle, and Lemieux the most, and these three guys each had similar point production. It wasn't great point production, but it was point production nonetheless. But Kaapo Kakko was in a position where he was in a very interesting coaching system, and I think anybody watching the Rangers games could actually comment on that. That Coach Quinn wasn't necessarily the best when it came to deploying Kaapo Kakko in effective situations. But last up here is Kirby Dach, a guy who played 46% of his even-strength ice time with Alex DeBrincat, 27% with Patrick Kane, and 25% with Dylan Strome. Now, because Kirby Dach's second and third most common even-strength line mates were at 27 and 25%, this also to me says that Dach was shuffled around a lot, and he didn't have time to develop proper chemistry when the second most common guy he played with played a quarter of his hockey playing time with Dach. Sure, Patrick Kane and Strome are really good, but heck, Alex DeBrincat is really good too, and as a result, Kirby Dach was in a position to get a positive relative team percentage goals plus minus per 60 and a shot per 60 and all that stuff. But the underlying numbers for Corsi kind of steer towards Jack Hughes' favor. So this has been a look at the 3 top picks of the 2019 draft and how their rookie seasons were all incredibly similar. And if anything, if this is a sign that these 3 guys are going to be so similar for the rest of their careers, it's going to be a crazy battle once they all hit their primes, because just now, playing on bad teams, some okay teams, and some pretty good teams actually, these 3 guys managed to put up really similar stats, really similar advanced stats, all with different circumstances around them. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.